So the beginning of this chapter is picking up directly off of the ending of the previous, where we saw Maki successfully completing her sumo and perception training with Mio, I guess, inside of his domain, where I guess she unlocked the full capabilities of Heavenly Restriction and is now able to perceive and sense things the way that Daido the swordsman did. Where in the previous chapter, Mio put it as being able to like smell light or see sound. You essentially sense everything about your opponent and yourself. And afterwards we see Maki coming out of the domain and Kamo's like, she's totally changed. What could have happened inside that domain in such a short amount of time? And then we get more information on Mio's domain where it says, as a result of the binding vow being removed, time flows faster in Mio's barrier. The time it takes for over 1,000 bouts inside the domain is less than 1 minute outside the barrier. So yeah, I'm sure you thought this yourself, but this is pretty much just a miniature hyperbolic time chamber. And it's like, I get it. This is necessary. We need to get to this point with Maki, and we can't really waste too much time in the story, but also in our real life as well, like stretching this out multiple chapters. But anyway, Naoya like retracts himself and starts to do that move that we saw him do a couple chapters back, where he gains distance and then like shoots himself like a bullet at Mach 3 speed, essentially. But then we come to Naoya like darting all around, like smashing in and out of buildings, trying to successfully take down Maki, which he can't now. And we pretty much expected this to happen because, like it's been established, Maki got her power up and she's, I guess seemingly using the full capability of Heavenly Restriction, which later on in this chapter is going to be implied that she's pretty much on the same level as Toji at this point. Because she says, everything around me will tell me how Naoya will move. That person would have reached that height. That person would have thrown a katana without hesitation. That person would have been able to handle everything at that high speed. It isn't enough to be like everyone else. Something only I can see, something only that person can see, that exists. And that person, of course, is Toji, because like she says, she's the only other person that pretty much has Heavenly Restriction like he did, or at least known. And we also don't know why they have Heavenly Restriction or fully what Heavenly Restriction is, but I assume eventually we'll probably get more insight into that. But Maki is so powerful now that she's breaking like one of the biggest battle manga rules, and it's that you can't dodge in midair. But she's doing it because she dodges Naoya in midair. She's just become so perceptive and aware of her surroundings as to where she could just do this now. And she says, the atmosphere around us may seem empty, but differences in temperature and air density create scattered surfaces. So she can see this and sense this now, meaning that whatever Naoya does, she's going to be aware of it before he's fully able to strike her. But first, real quick, let's talk about gamer subs, because it's currently September, and that means every week there's going to be a new waifu cup drop. And starting this week, it's the Teacher Cup. This thing is aesthetically appealing in more ways than one. And these things are great not only because they're aesthetically appealing, but also it makes drinking gamer stuff so much easier. So for example, you can take the new Emotional Damage, which is like a strawberry peach flavor, add it to your waifu cup, shake it up, and now it's become that much more aesthetic. And there's also teacher shirts available too. This thing's pretty aesthetic as well. I really like this. I'm probably gonna be wearing it out any chance I get. So guys, check out the link in the description and make sure you use my code BIGZ at checkout. That way you'll get 10% off your purchase. Thanks. And she winds up just counter-striking him like down into the pavement. But it doesn't really affect him too much because it is just a standard punch. And while it is like a superhuman punch, he is a curse after all, and you need Jujutsu to take him down ultimately. So then Mio comes in and like headbutts him, and Daido comes with a follow-up and just cuts him directly in half. And then the final part of the combo here is just Maki kicking him apart. And then we get this nice little parallel panel of seeing like Toji behind her. This is essentially like what Naoya is perceiving here in this moment. Finally realizing that she is the new Toji, which is something that he's kind of been in denial about, because Naoya himself always wanted to be the new Toji, which is pretty interesting because the only thing that Naoya and Maki have in common is their admiration of Toji. And if it wasn't enough for Maki to just ultimately be stronger than Naoya, which that alone is enough to drive him crazy, but the fact that she's now become like the new version of his idol is like pushing him past the breaking point for sure. But anyway, coming into the end of the chapter here, after Naoya had been cut in half by Daido and kicked apart by Maki, suddenly humanoid Naoya comes out of the half of the body that had been cut. And he says, the one who stands with them is me, referring to his admiration for Toji, of course. course. This goes back to what he originally said to Maki in, I think, chapter 150 or 151. So yeah, this is also something we've been speculating about for weeks now. We assumed that Naoya would have a third and final form, which would likely return him to like a humanoid type state. But I also expected him to have wings here because, you know, he started off as like a worm, then he kind of went into like the cocoon metapod form. I mean, he still might sprout wings. Maybe he does or doesn't, it doesn't really matter. I just think it's cool that he's finally back in like his humanoid form. But this is like one of the most human-like curses that we've seen so far since like Mahito. And I keep saying curse because I assume that he still is here. He has like white eyes, so I guess that's going to be his main curse-like trait here, unless he's like fully been reincarnated, which is possible, but I don't think we've ever seen anything like that happen in the series yet. So I guess we'll just have to wait for some good old Gege exposition in the next chapter, if we even get it. But I would say he's more so still a curse at this point, and this is just like his full true form. I wouldn't even be surprised if what they were facing was still like a variation of a cursed womb or something. But then he activates his domain, something that we haven't seen before, obviously, not even from his dad Naobito. So what could Projection Sorcery's domain expansion be like? Well, aside from going into like crazy speculation, we could just assume at first maybe it would just have like the auto hit feature of the domains, as to where he doesn't really have to touch you anymore to make you trapped in a frame of animation. It kind of just happens as soon as you're in the domain, and that alone in itself is pretty broken. But I also speculated in my spoilers video for this chapter that maybe instead of just perceiving the 24 frames of animation and you have to abide by it if he touches you, or he himself also has to, he kind of just slices up reality into 24 frames so that everything in the vicinity is now a part of that, and he can just trap moments of reality in the frames instead of just an individual person or thing. But aside from that, I also expect him to be unbelievably powerful here, because naturally that's the progression of things here. We saw how powerful he was originally, and then once he went to his metapod form, now he's going to possibly be one of the strongest curses ever, if not the strongest curse that we've seen so far, if he is still a curse, in fact, which I assume he is. And I'd really like to see how Heavenly Restriction does in a domain, which I'm sure we all do. But now that she's almost doubled in power here, seemingly, she is without a doubt one of the strongest characters right now, and I think it's safe to say that she's probably stronger than Yuji and Megumi at this point. I mean, granted, they haven't had the training and the power-ups that she's had, and we haven't seen them in a long time, but right now she seems to be stronger than them for sure. And as for Dido and Mio, I assume they're getting trapped in this domain as well, and unfortunately I could totally see one of them dying here. Maybe Dido. I mean, I hope not, but man, it seems like at least one of them is probably going to be kicking the bucket here. But let me know what you think about this chapter in the comments, guys. And if you liked the video, please give it a like, and please subscribe if you haven't already. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.